Hey everyone, I'm Kai Tremer, the host of the Soccerpedia podcast. For today's episode, I'm very excited to have André Schembri to appear on the episode. André is a former Malta international soccer player who has made 94 appearances and has scored 3 goals for his national team. He has played all across Europe and into Asia as well. And so I'm very excited to have him on the show. And without further ado, here's the show.
Hi
Hey,
Kai, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Thank you very much for having the time to appear on the episode. I'm very happy that you are here.
You are welcome. No worries at all. I'm happy to do it as well.
Thank you. So yeah, let's get started. So you are a legend in Maltese football. You've made 94 appearances for the national team. You've scored 3 goals, and you're international. Of those 3 goals, they all came in the Euro 2008 qualifiers. You famously scored against Turkey, and then you also scored against Hungary as well. What were those moments? What did it feel like to score against those national teams and overall your international career?
Yes, as you know, whether you are a sports person or a politician or whatever, I think it's an honor thing to represent your country. Um, um, Apart from that, yes, scoring for my country was also something special for me, especially when you know that my country always loses. Yeah, it's not easy to win, especially when you know that our players are amateurs and we are playing against big nations like Italy, England, which are the top teams in the world, not only just Europe. So
Mhm.
yeah, especially in Hungary, I was still young. I was still 20 years old, and I scored 2 goals. And this ended up at 13 years of a competitive win for Malta. So
Mhm.
yeah, that day was very special to me. And also that competition was also good because we did a record. We had 5 points, and yeah, we drew against Turkey and Moldova as well.
Mhm.
And yes, for me, it was the beginning of playing with the national team. And yes, within the first 5 games, I scored already 3 goals. However, consequently, then things didn't went well with the national team. Especially
Mhm.
when I left Malta, I was training in a professional environment, and then when I came back to play in the national team, I used to have that cultural shock,
Mhm.
in football terms. So yeah, eventually, yes, although I would give my 100%, yeah, I couldn't fulfill my potential with the national team.
Mhm. Okay. And growing up, who did you look up to as a player, as a role model? Who did you try to somewhat get your advice or try to replicate in a way? Who was your role model?
Yeah, for sure. My role model was my grandfather, yeah, who was the first ever Maltese captain, who captained the Maltese national team in the first international game way back in 1957. And yeah, he was, apart from my idol, was my mentor as well. And yeah, I used to enjoy spending time with him, also with my dad, who was a coach also, and that helped me. As you might know, football runs into the
Yeah,
family.
yeah.
My grandfather, my father, my uncles, they all used to play with the national team. Yeah, apart from that, I'm a football fan as well. I support AS Roma, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my idol was Francesco Totti at that time. So I,
Mm-hmm.
I used to try and replicate him in training, and yeah, I think he was the only one who I used to yeah look up to,
Mm,
apart from
okay.
my family members.
Okay. And you're very well traveled. You've played in Malta, you've played in Cyprus, India, Germany, Hungary, Portugal. And so, out of those leagues, what was the most challenging league for you as far as style of play or their philosophy and the approach to the game?
Yeah, I think that every country has its difficulties. However, coming from a Mediterranean country, I was more adapted to countries such as Greece, Cyprus, Portugal, because there is the same kind of football philosophy. If I had to if I had to say which was the most difficult country, was Germany, because I believe that Germany, the physical fitness is very high. You need to run a lot in the game. So yeah, it's not easy to adapt to that environment.
Mm. And if you could play in any league that you have never played in before, which league would it be and why?
Yeah, yeah. My dream was always to try and play in Italy. However, I never had that chance to. And yeah, why? Because I'm an Italian fan. I love Serie A, and Malta is very close to Italy. So yeah, we're influenced a lot by the Italians. So yeah, that was my dream. However, I never reached it. But
Mm.
luckily enough, I played against the national team of Italy, which was also something good.
Yes, one of the photos I saw you famously, of course, when playing against Italy, there's a picture of you being your shirt was being pulled by Andrea Pirlo, and it's very I think that's very amazing that you have connections to a lot of them. I'd say more well-known international soccer players. Was there any player that you looked forward to playing against, let's say during your international career or at club level?
Yeah, basically those players that you mentioned, like Pirlo, Wayne Rooney, Balotelli, Ibrahimovic. I played against them with the national team. Yes, so as I mentioned before, with the national team of Malta, our players are not professional, so it's not easy to play against these teams, especially when they have superstars with these teams.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's a nice experience, and when you play against these type of players, you also improve because you see their talent, and yes, you appreciate.
Mm. And you mentioned earlier about how there's a lot of Italian influence in Malta. I was curious, how many languages do you speak? And was there any league that you played in that you ever had any issues with language barrier?
Yes, basically the first thing I would try and do when I went into a new country is to try and learn the language, because that helps me to fit into the culture more easily. However, there were certain countries like Hungary. It was very difficult to learn the language, and because the teams are basically made up of foreigners, it was much easier to speak in English.
Mm-hmm.
However, yes, at the stage I speak around about, so my official languages are Maltese and English.
Mm-hmm.
However, I can communicate in Italian, German, Portuguese, and Greek. So yeah, basically around about 6 languages.
Okay. And so you called time on your professional career back in March with Chennaiyin in India. And so at 34 years old, it's not necessarily, there's been players that still goes on to play when they're close to 40 years old. What came to your decision to retire a couple months ago?
Yes, basically, I think that I had reached my full potential, and I couldn't go far. And I'm not that person who keeps on playing just to have a salary. I'm a type of person that has intrinsic motivation. And basically, yes, I was also preparing to become a coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I was I was doing also my badges as well. So
Mm-hmm.
at this stage, I have my UEFA B, and
Okay.
also I just finished my degree in sports science and coaching in football. So I was
Okay.
preparing as well to become a coach.
Okay.
And yes, that was the main reason that I felt that the time is up, and I think I need to change my career and become a
Mm-hmm.
coach.
Okay. Where would you like to coach in? Like any club or any league that would be a dream?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I'm based in Cyprus, and at this stage, I am coaching the under 15s of my previous club, Apollon Limassol.
Okay.
Yeah, I am very ambitious. I would love to coach at professional level, especially I start in Cyprus, where people
Mhm.
know me more. I would love to travel the world. It's also a dream for me to come to the States as well to coach there, because yeah, I would love to come to the States
Mhm.
to work there. Yeah, and maybe before I also end my career in coaching, I would love to coach the national team of Malta one day.
No. And speaking of the Malta national team, back in 2016, you famously criticized the Malta Football Association because you said that Malta's there was a lack of progress or innovation within the federation, especially towards the youth teams. And so this was 4 years ago. Where do you see Maltese football within the next 5 to 10 years? Are you optimistic about the direction that they are going?
Very good question, and it's not easy to answer. Basically, a couple of months ago, a new administration got elected into the Malta Football Association. The roadmap looks nice because I have seen also certain projects, and they were trying also to try and create a football team that can compete in the third division in Italy, which is also a good thing. They also have a grassroots program as well to try and optimize the talent of Maltese footballer. So things are trying to move on, slowly. However, it's a bit interesting, and also I'm curious to what will happen in another 10 years. But hopefully, we will be better than as we are now.
Because the current the current Malta team has been together for a very long time. Yourself represented the team for close to 15 years. Michael Mifsud still plays for the national team. You have Andrew Hogg and Justin Haber, and you have Andre Agius and Alfred Effion, all that are in their 30s. So I was just curious if there's any players in, let's say, the Maltese under 19 or 21 team that can you see helping for the national team in the next few years.
As you mentioned correctly, as you see our ages in the national team, they're all, the average age is over 30s nearly, which says it all, that there is a scarce of talent in Maltese football, However, I'm not sure if there is potential at this stage because I have been out of Malta now for the past 13, 14 years, although I follow everything. But as you can see, the national team is, the average age is over 30, so talent is scarce at this stage, So that's why I always criticize the Malta Football Association to try and implement something to optimize Maltese talent, because at the end of the day, you will always find talent in every country in the world, However, you need a structure and you need the correct environment to optimize that talent.
That's true, because in countries like China or India with over 1 billion people, they're still, to this day, they're not the world powers in soccer, and you have smaller countries about less than 5 million people like Uruguay and Croatia that have succeeded. So I agree that no matter how small a nation is, they can still, as long as they put in the resources, they can be successful.
I agree with you. In fact, 15, 20 years ago, people mostly used to say that we can never compete and we can never enter into the World Cup or European Cup because we're too small. However, that theory has been broken by Iceland, which their country is 380,000, which is very close to Malta, And in fact, if you have the right resources and the right structure and the right people in the right job, you can do it.
And so back on your own backstory, both your father and grandfather played for the Malta national soccer team. And what was Maltese soccer like back when they were playing?
I mean, it was amateurish as well, At that time, football was just passion. It wasn't a job, you know what I mean? However, at that time, they used to say that there was more talent because players, when they were young, they used to play more in the streets, And nowadays, that kids stay much more inside and play their computer games, PlayStation, and they don't go and try and play out, However, yes, as I mentioned before, Maltese football is still amateurish, although some of players are semi-professionals. There's a big difference from the times of my grandfather and at present, So those times it was very, very different from these days.
And recently, Malta, whenever the World Cup or Euro qualifyings occur, Malta is usually placed in with a few of the more established national teams. Recently, Malta was in the same group as Italy, Croatia, England, Greece, Denmark in years past. And so, how does the team prepare for those types of games?
Yeah, basically the team try and prepare as professionally as possible. Some of the players who have their jobs, they have to take leave, because at the end of the day, the national team has camps, so we try and prepare 10 days before. Yeah, we stay in the hotel together, we train together, and then we have to fly to different countries as well. So yeah, basically we're trying to prepare as professionally as we can, although our players are not professional, which is very difficult. Imagine one time we played against England, and the day after, half of our team went to work. So, playing against those players, and then you have half of the team that have to work the day after. It's not an easy task for sure. As I mentioned, our players, the majority of the players play in Malta as well. And when you play week in, week out in an amateurish environment, and then once per month or once per 2 months you have to play in this professional environment, it's not an easy to make that transition, so that's why our results are very poor when it comes to international football.
And after looking back on your career, do you have any regrets, and what are your most memorable moments, either international career or club career?
So yeah, my biggest regret is that I didn't leave Malta at an early age, because I believed if you want to reach to the top, you have to leave Malta at an early age, 16. I remember I had a chance to leave at the age of 17 years old. However, the club made it difficult for me, so the transfer didn't materialize. I left Malta at the age of 21, which was already late. So yeah, that's my biggest regret regarding football. However, yes, if I had to mention, yeah, the best memory I had in professional football, well, I had some, like when I scored in the Europa League group stages, which made me the first Maltese player to score in the group stages of the Europa League. When I scored, with the national team and won against Hungary, which ended 13 years of competitive win. When I scored against Benfica in front of 70,000 people against Ederson, which today is the goalkeeper of Man City. So yeah, I had quite interesting moments in my career, which I really which I really enjoy when I speak about them.
And do you have any advice for any aspiring soccer player that's either if they are from Malta or anywhere else in the world to get to the highest level of soccer, or wherever you, or how you came to at your level?
Yes, I believe that my advice is to all football players who are aspiring to be professional footballers is to keep 3 values. And the first one is to be humble, because when you are humble, you are ready to listen to everyone, especially your coaches. To be a hard worker, because you can't succeed if you don't work hard. Especially in today's modern football, you need to work much more. And to be hungry for success. Whenever you reach a target, you need to reach another one and keep going. However, if I had to finish, I would say that in order to be successful, I think you have to get out of your comfort zone.
And yeah, that was basically all my questions. And I just want to say, Andre, thank you very much for having the time to appear on the show. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Kai, and I look forward to keep in touch with you. And yes, thanks a lot for the invitation as well.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye. See you, Kai.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.